This is Dr. Rayner, and I want to welcome you all listening to our webinar on thyroid health. This is a very important webinar for many of you because it's going to contain a lot of information about why you are not feeling well and why it's been a struggle with your thyroid conditions. My intention for you is that this is a very informative webinar, and but not only that, that the information you gain from this will help you turn things around. I know this is something that can be very frustrating in terms of dealing with thyroid health, and this is kind of why we do these talks, because you're not alone. There's a lot of you out there with thyroid issues. Thyroid disease is the third most common disease diagnosed in the US, and 90% of those people still do not feel 100% right. So if at this point, if you want to grab some pen and paper so you can jot down some notes, some questions, do so, because we're going to start going through, and we want to make sure that you don't miss anything that could be of value to you. For those of you listening, if you have your spouse nearby, if you can get them to listen in, that'd be great. Or if they can listen in and watch the webinar on their own kind of timetable, that'd be great. Because a lot of you go to doctors and you're told that everything's normal, or you're on medication, your labs have kind of come back to the normal range, but you still don't feel well. And you can go home with this information, and it can create a lot of tension in the household, and it can wreck households. So this is very important. If you can get them to listen in, this is going to help educate your spouses, your loved ones, as to why maybe your thyroid is not resolved yet, and there's more to it than just taking a simple medication. Before we get moving too far into the presentation, I'd like to pose this question. Is our healthcare in a state of crisis right now in this country? From my perspective, yes. And when I ask people in a live lecture, they always, everybody can see that we're not in a great state for our overall healthcare system. And the next question I'd like to pose is, how did we get here? Why are we? And a lot of answers are our food, our diet, our lack of exercise, the chemicals in our environment. We're all stressed out, and those are all great answers. Now, I like asking everyone too, when they're there, think about things that are unique in your situation, why your health may not be 100%, because those are things we're going to eventually have to address. But the one unique thing that kind of comes away from this is a lot of the things that we're facing, they're actually preventable. It's the environment. We can actually go in and change the environment. Now, when I look at our healthcare system, predominantly we're in a healthcare system that focuses on symptoms. Now, do we agree with that? Either you do or you don't, but for a lot of times you go to the doctor, you're like, hey, I have depression. I have this symptom, and this symptom, and based on that, you either get a medication or you won't. Very rarely do they figure out, okay, well, why do you have depression? Is it an issue making serotonin, the neurotransmitter that actually makes you feel good? And if so, where is the break in the system? That approach is rarely ever taken. And again, this is the same scenario when it comes to thyroid patients. You go to your doctor, you have symptoms of a thyroid issue, you're given a medication, say, be it Synthroid, levothyroxine, Armour, Cytomel, and you're kind of sent on your way, and you're left to hope that changes the labs. If it changes the labs and they go to where they're supposed to be, you're done pretty much in terms of management. Very rare, and I'm talking about 5 to 10% of the room when we're doing this in a live situation, actually knows what the cause of their thyroid issue is in the first place. It's really important to understand where the cause and the breakdown is, because when you understand that, that's one area that you actually have to focus on drastically to turn the entire health of that individual around. We're going to go through later on in this presentation on some of the basically the most common causes of thyroid issues, but I want you to start thinking about always asking the question, like, what's the cause of my health issue? Not what's the symptom. The symptom is the thyroid issue. What's causing the thyroid to struggle? Okay, so let's start looking at that as we go through. It's really important in terms of getting a grips and kind of taking and turning around your health. So when you look at the U.S. and what we spend on healthcare, we spend 17.5% of our gross domestic product on healthcare. That's more than double any other country in the world. yet the US is ranked 38th, which is dead last of all developed nations in terms of quality of health. Not acceptable from my definition when you put that much into it. So this is a big thing, is we have these health insurance cards. I have one, Dr. Nutt has one, and I mean, I have it for a reason, but the one thing is I don't depend on that to keep me healthy, because the definition of prevention on that health insurance card is not a gym membership. It's not organic vegetables. It's not an education on how to take care of myself and prevent disease. It's, hey, we'll do blood work and we'll do it once or twice a year as a screening process, but if something shows up on there that's pathological, it's already there. But at least we can call that prevention, and that's their definition of it. And we have to step back and, we have to start demanding more from our healthcare system, and we have to start doing better investing into our health. And that's very important if we're going to change not only our health around, but the health of the nation. So let's take a look at an example here. So this slide here lists some of the more common side effects of a common medication. And this, I could use this example with thyroid, but we're going to do it with a cholesterol lowering medication. Now, if you go into your doctor and your cholesterol is high or out of lab range, and they prescribe you a medication, and your cholesterol goes back into the desired range, but you don't do anything to change your lifestyle or what may have caused the cholesterol to go up in the first place, is that good or bad? I'm going to say that's always bad, because you've done nothing to alter what caused the spike in the first place, which means you didn't put out any fires that could be burning in your body. We have to understand that cholesterol is the precursor to the 600 hormones in our body. It's an antioxidant to our cells. It's anchored throughout our cells to give our cells stability. And when we have inflammation and cell damage, you're going to see increased demand for cholesterol because the body's calling for it. How many people have heard of good cholesterol and bad cholesterol? I'm referring to LDLs and HDLs. Well, it's important to note that that's not even cholesterol. Those are carrier proteins. LDL is low density lipoprotein. HDL is high density lipoprotein. LDLs carry the cholesterol to the site of injury. HDLs shuttle things back to the liver. So again, looking at that, we have to look at cholesterol is good, and it's important. We have to understand, why is it going high in the first place? And this is the same approach you have to look at when it comes to thyroid health. You don't want to just change labs, because that's just smoke and mirrors. You want to figure out what's causing the issue in the first place and focus your attention on the cause. I hope this makes sense to people, because we're going to start going through more of the thyroid physiology. But this is important because majority of people that come to our office have no idea what's causing their thyroid issues, but yet they're on a medication altering their labs, which I'm not absolutely against if it's needed. We're not against medicine. There's a time and a place. It's just a matter of, we have to figure out what's causing the stress to the system in the first place. Now let's shift our focus towards some thyroid physiology and thyroid health. It's really important that you guys understand that every single cell in your body has receptors for thyroid hormone. This means that every single cell in your entire body, from your brain down to your toes, is affected by thyroid hormones. Now, can you see why, when the thyroid is off, that there can be such a drastic array of symptoms? And it may not be a simple, hey, I just need to take Synthroid and I'll feel better. It may be more than that, and we're going to continue to go through that pathway to help you understand why it's more complex than just that. But let's look at some things that the thyroid supports. And again, know that it attaches to every single cell in your body to give an effect on various tissues. But we know it affects bone metabolism. It helps modulate the immune system, the brain and the nervous system, GI function, gut function, the liver and gallbladder, growth and sex hormones, fat burning. Obviously, if we're having issues with metabolism, that's what the thyroid is meant to support, our cells' metabolism. So you would see an issue with fat burning. insulin and glucose metabolism, healthy cholesterol levels, proper stomach acid. This is just listing off a few. All right, so the big thing is that take away from this that every single cell in your entire body has what we call like catcher mitts, the landing site for thyroid hormone that we want the thyroid hormone to land on, to bind to turn on the desired effect inside the cell. Okay, this helps make it kind of evident why there can be depression as a consequence of thyroid issues, fatigue, brain fog, cholesterol changes, gut issues, osteoporosis, and bone issues. All can be from a thyroid issue that's still not 100% resolved. So again, very important slide, and I hope this starts to kind of give you an understanding of why this is such a big issue when the thyroid is off. So knowing that the thyroid affects every cell in your entire body, let's look at some of the symptoms of thyroid issues. So hair loss and thinning of our hair, thinning of our eyebrows. The outer 1/3 of our eyebrows is very common to see as a consequence of thyroid issues. Some other things that we are going to see is you're going to be tired, you're going to be sluggish. Again, just because you can't drive and turn on our cells in our body to have basically metabolism going on to feed ourselves and feed our bodies the energy it needs. Bowel difficulty, you may have irritable bowel, bouts of constipation with diarrhea, depression. I mean, does it make sense if you can't turn on the metabolism of your brain to make the necessary neurotransmitters? Could you start to see issues with depression, i.e. serotonin production, dopamine, and feeling the way you should? So it's pretty common. Morning headaches that start to wear off as the day goes on. These are common, and again, if you have blood sugar issues, you may have afternoon headaches that kind of come into play. Weight gain, this is a pretty common complaint with thyroid patients. But again, in our office, this is one of the least worrisome things that we talk about, because there's so many other things that are more important. Cold hands and cold feet. The other thing we like to add to this is touch the tip of your nose. Is the nose cold as well? It's really important to understand that the small blood vessels that carry blood flow to your fingertips and your toes are very similar in diameter to the blood vessels that carry blood flow to your frontal lobe and parts of your brain that are very important for health. So cold hands, cold feet. We say also cold brain in our office. Hot flashes. This may or may not make sense. Again, depending on your cause of thyroid issue, this may actually be true to you, and you'll start to understand why in a little bit. Mood swings. Again, if you're having issues making hormones, neurotransmitters, mood swings are not off the table, and they're a very, very possible side effect, and especially the more frustrated you get with your thyroid issue. Nervous and emotional. Again, all comes down to it's not just a thyroid issue. You may have trouble making certain neurotransmitters and be able to calm yourself down, and as a result, you may have symptoms of being nervous, emotional, anxiety, and panic. Also, sleep difficulties, insomnia. You may have difficulty falling asleep, initiating sleep, which it takes you longer than 30 minutes to fall asleep each night. That's the definition of insomnia. Very common the longer the thyroid issues go on. Night sweats is another one, and again, this isn't true for everyone, but for people with a certain cause, a thyroid issue, this is very true. So there are a variety of different ways that the thyroid will show up, and what we include in terms of symptoms, that's not the be-all list. That's just to give you an idea of the more common ones. So let's look at what's the common form of treatment for thyroid issues. It's been a 50-year-old model. It hasn't really changed over the last 50 years. And it's thyroid hormone replacement with drugs like Synthroid, levothyroxine. And again, it's really important to note before we move on that Synthroid is T4, okay? And that will make more sense to you when you go further on. But again, this is a 40 to 50-year-old model, And when there's still 90% of the patients that have thyroid issues still suffering with symptoms and complications of it, it's really important to look, is this model working for us? It's not working. Why do we keep depending on a model that isn't providing the solution to our thyroid patients? So shifting our focus to how the thyroid hormone is made in our body, because this is really important. Ideally, this is probably going to set off some light bulbs on a lot of people's heads as to, oh, this is why I still don't feel 100% right yet, even though I'm on medication and my labs are normal. Okay, so the whole story starts in the brain. The hypothalamus releases TRH, or thyroid releasing hormone, to go down to stimulate the pituitary gland, again, still in our brain, to make TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. The TSH from our pituitary then travels in our bloodstream to meet up with the thyroid gland itself, and from there we start making thyroid hormone in the forms of T4 and T3. Now that we're out of the brain environment, let's look at from the thyroid down to the GI tract and what's involved in hormone production for the thyroid. So when our thyroid makes hormone, 93% is T4 and 7% is T3. This is very, very important because we need to know that T4, if it was to go by ourselves trying to turn on metabolism, T4 is inactive and is not going to do a darn thing for us, whereas T3 is the biological active thyroid hormone. Okay? What is Synthroid? What is levothyroxine? It is T4. Okay? We need T3 to do work. So how do we get more? The thyroid has these carrier proteins that work for it that take the inactive T4 and carry it to the liver, where an enzyme in the liver called 5'-deiodinase converts another 60% of T4 into T3. Okay? Another small amount will go to the peripheral tissues and be converted into T3. Approximately around 20% is going to be converted into reverse T3, which is inactive. And another 20% is going to be converted into inactive forms of T3, but they're going to get shuttled to our GI tract, where we're going to depend on bacteria that have what's called sulfatase enzymes, again, to convert into more active T3. Now, when you look at all those steps, can you see how it's not as simple of one, let's just give you thyroid medication, because you could have a liver issue that's impacting your thyroid. You could have gut issues that's impacting your thyroid, peripheral tissue issues that's impacting your thyroid, as well as looking at how different hormone fluctuations like estrogens, cortisol, our stress hormone can impact all those downstream mechanisms of thyroid hormone production. And unfortunately, all those areas are so often overlooked. If you look at your lab test, the majority of people, when they get their thyroid tested, will get TSH and T4 evaluated. Can you see the crime in not looking at T3, reverse T3, and other markers? Because we need to know what's going on downstream. Maybe the thyroid's working fine, but if you have a liver issue and you're taking a medication just to make sure that everything's normal, but you have a liver issue, you still can have issues converting into T3, but yet your T4 and TSH values may be perfectly normal on labs. I really hope this makes sense, because this is one of the first things you have to look at. You have to test properly to figure out what's all affected on that story of your thyroid. So let's look at the different causes of thyroid issues. All right, so first and foremost, you have to have the proper testing. This is not just looking at TSH, T4, okay? It's well beyond that. Okay, so let's look at primary hypothyroidism. That's just where the thyroid tissue itself is not efficient at doing its job. No matter if you stimulate with TSH, it just can't turn out enough T4 and T3 into the bloodstream to go downstream and do more work. Okay. Next cause, secondary to a brain issue, or hypopituitary. This is very common in traumatic brain injuries, where there's damage to basically the pituitary system, where it just can't release enough TSH to go stimulate the thyroid gland. Okay. Thyroid under or overconversion. This is where the liver, the GI tract, and things that are downstream aren't efficient at helping convert T4 into T3 at the right ratio. Thyroid binding globulin increases, which is a carrier hormone for your thyroid hormone. So if for some reason you have too much carrier protein in the bloodstream, what it does is it holds on to thyroid hormone more tightly, and it can't dish it off to the cells to turn on metabolism. So things that can do that are estrogens, like birth control, estrogen therapy. You'll see a lot of older women, they're doing it more and more now. There's hormone replacement centers popping up everywhere, and it's really important to understand that this can have an impact on your thyroid. Thyroid resistance, this is basically where those catcher's mitts, those receptors on the outside of your cells, they are either changing their conformation, their shape, where they're not able to bind onto thyroid hormone efficiently to turn on metabolism. And lastly, the most common cause of thyroid issue for low thyroid is autoimmune or Hashimoto's thyroiditis. This accounts for the majority of thyroid issues in the US. Worldwide, it's iodine deficiency. In North America and the US, it's autoimmune Hashimoto's thyroiditis. This is important because I pose the next question to you is, if this is the main cause of the most thyroid issues in the US, it's important to know that you have an autoimmune issue, which means your immune system, for some reason, has found and looked at your thyroid gland as foe and has tagged it as a foreign entity, and your immune system has attacked it. Okay? And as you attack your thyroid gland, there's less and less functional tissue left to make the necessary thyroid hormone for your body. Now again, it's important, we talked about having those hot flashes early on in symptoms. So when you have more autoimmune mechanisms, you can teeter-totter between moments of hyper and hypo, or even normal, for years, until there's just enough damage where you go from normal to a low functioning state. Because when your immune system attacks your thyroid gland, it can release a flood of hormones into the bloodstream and push you into hyperthyroid states, or even back to a normal state, which can make you, again, show up as normal in labs, even though you still have this immune issue attacking your thyroid gland, and you do have a thyroid issue, but the thyroid issue is secondary to an immune issue. And this is an important point is, if you have Hashimoto's or an autoimmune thyroiditis, what's the issue? No amount of Synthroid or levothyroxine is going to take care of the autoimmunity against your thyroid. So there needs to be an immune approach that starts to take care of your immune system. Okay, I hope this makes sense because this is huge for the majority of people with thyroid issues in the US. 90% of people that have a thyroid issue in the US have an autoimmune mechanism behind their thyroid issue. So by looking at this slide, you can see it just reiterates what I just said, that 90% of thyroid symptoms among US women is due to really an autoimmune condition, okay? It's not a thyroid issue, it's an immune issue causing a thyroid problem, okay? This is really important, and again, don't shoot the messenger. I'm telling you this to help educate you, because when you start to understand what's causing it, you can really start to create the road to helping turn things around and creating a better solution for yourself in terms of your health. Another reason why it's important to understand what's the cause of your thyroid issue, your health issue, is this stat from the research showing that 50 to 60% of patients with Hashimoto's have other autoimmunities, which means they have other tissues that are under attack. Some common ones are the pancreas, the myelin that basically coats our nerves and can lead to multiple sclerosis, brain tissue, intestine, resulting in things like Crohn's, irritable bowel syndrome, ulcerative colitis, celiac disease, joint tissue, and you can see like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, the uterus, stomach, and spine, and osteoporosis. These are just a few. No tissue is off limits, but these are some of the more common ones, and it's incredibly important, again, that you understand that you have to figure out the cause of your thyroid issue, because again, if it is Hashimoto's, more than half will have, if they don't already, a second autoimmunity. And again, there's a lot you can do to support the immune system. And no amount of Synthroid or insulin can correct an autoimmune condition. And this is huge. You have to start taking steps towards changing your environment, removing triggers, and supporting the immune system to actually start addressing the long-term issues. Okay, so this is an important slide, and again, please take a note and start to realize how important it is to get to the cause of the issue. Now, looking at this slide, I mean, it says a lot, especially when it comes to thyroid issues, but what it's saying is 90% of all diseases prevalent today are not treatable with orthodox medical procedures. The World Health Organization, a fairly reputable source when it comes to research, okay? And what does this mean in terms of a thyroid patient? Well, the thyroid condition is a chronic condition that falls into that 90%. Same with the autoimmunities. The medical systems have no idea, other than throwing a medication at you, how to take care of these type of conditions, okay? And this is huge because there are better solutions out there, but the orthodox, common practice ones in the medical world is not getting it done. Now, I have nothing against the medical systems. I mean, I have lots of friends that are medical doctors. If I ever had an acute injury, if I cut my leg, they're great at taking care of acute situations, and that's the 10% they're really great at. The other 90%, when it comes to long-term chronic conditions against our health, they're not the best at. And this is what this slide is alluding to. And again, this is why we have to step away and start to look at different solutions in terms of taking care of ourselves and getting our health back. So is there help out there for those people suffering from chronic conditions like thyroid issues? Absolutely. Our office is a walking example of that, and we get the results because we take a very different approach when we look at our patients. We start with getting the correct tests done. Okay, I can't tell you enough how important it is to figure out what's causing the stress against the system in the first place. You have to understand the cause. So where do you start? I mean, you have to order the correct tests, because when you do this, you can predict the future of your health. You have to order the correct tests, you have to be thorough, and you have to figure out what is the cause of the thyroid issue. Is it liver? Is it gut? Is it autoimmunity? Do you have antibodies against your thyroid? You can't move forward in terms of taking care of yourself until you know these important things. And this is something we stress when we work with our patients. Very first and foremost, figure out what the cause is by ordering the correct tests, okay? Determine the true underlying cause of your complaint or your issue, and we can start to move forward. And when we figure out the cause, we focus on it and not your symptoms. Do we want to make sure your thyroid levels normalize and get better? Absolutely. But when we focus on the underlying cause, a lot of these kind of lingering symptoms or lab issues take care of themselves. And that's the biggest thing. We focus on the cause, not the symptoms, and this is huge, and this is a big part of why we get the results we do. The other thing we do when we work with our patients, we have to correct the dysfunction and not jump to altering labs with drugs, because again, this only covers up issues that are still unresolved. And another thing we have to do, you have to address the body as a whole. Your liver affects your brain, and vice versa, your brain affects the liver. So you can't take these organs and separate them from one another. They all tie into each other to affect one another. You can see, like we said, when we went through thyroid physiology, how the brain has an impact on thyroid function. So if you have a brain issue or a traumatic brain injury, this can in turn basically affect the thyroid and other hormone systems. So when you look at taking care of someone with a thyroid issue, you have to address the body as a whole and respect all the organ systems and all the parts of the body that play into one another. One important thing when it comes to turning around your health is you need a systematic approach. You can't just throw random medications at somebody, and just like we can't throw random supplements at our patients. I mean, you need to have a calculated, planned approach to address all the different causes that could be perpetuating the thyroid issue. Okay, this is something we take great pride on because this is one of the reasons we get great results. The other thing that's a part of our systematic approach is once we get you feeling better and turning your health around, we start shifting the focus in terms of we need to educate you. We need to help you understand why we did all those things and how to keep them moving forward, because if we don't make you independent in terms of your healthcare choices, you're always going to be stuck depending on somebody else. And that's kind of why the health of the nation is kind of in the state it is, because we've depended on other people for so long in terms of what do I do for my health? What do I eat? Well, I mean, surely this is in the grocery store, so this is healthy for me. No, this is not the case, and this is why the last part of our program where we work with our patients is educating. We educate you on different areas of health like nutrition, why I should and should not eat certain things, exercise, why certain types of exercise may be really good for me when others that are very conventional might not actually be great for my body. Detoxification is another area we stress because if your liver and your GI tract aren't working well, I mean, this can be huge insults to your body. I mean, 80% of your immune system's in your GI tract. Is that important if you have an autoimmune condition? Absolutely. We also address and educate on the nervous system because, again, a healthy brain is a healthy body, and we got to help you understand how do you protect that beautiful brain of yours, and what things can you do to make sure it stays healthy well into your later years of life. And the other thing we educate on is supplementation. I mean, we're not for you being on tons of supplements, but we're for you being on the ones that you absolutely need and educating you on how to know which ones are good and which ones are bad and worth or not worth your money. Okay, so overall, this is what we do. We create this systematic approach, put all these things in place for our patients, and this in turn helps us deliver results. So lastly, the most important part of what we do in our office is mentoring. Now, if you're learning or wanting to fly a plane, you could go out and buy the best books. You could go out and do the flight simulator, but you still would not be safe to get up in that plane and fly it just yet. You need a co-pilot to kind of walk you through the books, the flight simulator, time up in the plane before you actually hand over the flight of that plane to you. And this is how we approach our patients, is that we have to walk you through and mentor you in terms of how to make and take care of your health, because we want you to be successful and independent outside of our office once we're done working with you, because if we don't do that, we aren't doing our job. Now, I like this quote from the Chinese proverb, "Tell me, and I may remember. Show me, and I will remember. Involve me, and I will understand." This is huge, and this is something we take to heart when we work with our patients. We have to have you act on the knowledge, or else it just will not be true understanding for you. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but being able to act on it is what gives you the power of having all that knowledge, and this is something we stress in our patients. So when working with patients, this is something we always kind of ask them before we start, because we want to make sure that they're working with us for the right reasons. So, I mean, you got to ask yourself, how would life be different if I were able to resolve my health issues? You have to understand, how has your life been affected as a result of your thyroid issues? Relationships, has it damaged, hurt relationships, made them stronger? Has it affected your ability to work to your full potential, your ability to enjoy life, reach goals that you have? And 3, and the most important, on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated am I to really take care of my problem? Because the way we look at it in our office is that Dr. Nutt and myself, we're always going to be there, and we're going to give 100% with our patients. But if you're answering on a scale of 1 to 10 how motivated you are, you're at a 3, I mean, that's not exactly where we want our patients to be in terms of motivation. If you're a 7, 8, 9, 10, we can work with you. because we really want the patients in our office wanting the change for themselves just as much as we want it for them. And so what we say is, we can help A and B students. A students, they show up in our office and we set out a game plan, and right off from the get-go, they hit the ground running and they never look back. B students, they're there, they're determined for the change, but they may stumble a couple times. But that's, again, what we're there for as mentors. We're going to pick them up and we're going to get them through what they need to get through and get them successful and get them healthy. The C students that we don't work with, those are the ones that they say they want change, but they're just not quite ready to do what it takes to get the change. So if you answer those questions and you answered somewhere where you're on a scale of 7, 8, 9 on a scale of 1 to 10, then this is kind of how things work in our office. All right, so we do what's called a complete wellness evaluation. This involves me or Dr. Nutt taking an hour of our time and sitting down with you and really getting to know you. Okay, so it's an hour consultation. There's been times where it's taken longer, but the main thing is we set aside an hour for our first meeting. This is important because the average doctor's visit in this country is 7 to 10 minutes. This is not enough time to get to know you. So the hour that we set aside allows us to figure out, one, we need to figure out a plan of action and an evaluation of where we need to test to give us that plan of action. So when you come into our office, we're already going to send you a booklet of questionnaires to get us some background information first. Again, so when we do sit down for that hour, we are going to be very efficient with our time, and we're going to get all the information we need to start putting a plan of action for you. Okay? The other thing that's important to know is we're not going to sit across from some desk from you. We're going to sit knee to knee and have a conversation. We're going to get to know you because this is important. If we're going to take care of you, we need to get to know you. All right, so normally for the hour, there's a fee of $280, but for people looking and listening to our webinar, we make it an $87 investment. Now, by no means does $87 cover the hour of our time with you, but again, it's an investment, and we just want to make sure that there's some form of commitment on the other side in our meeting. Okay, this is important. Again, it's skin in the game, is what we like to call it, and the reason we do this weeds out the C students, the people that answered the question on a scale of 1 to 10 that were lower, like a 1, 2s, and 3s. Okay, because when we sit across from you, we want to make sure you're there for the right reasons, because when we sit across, we are there looking to help you take things and turn your health around. Okay, so I hope this helps you understand kind of how it works, and then from there, when we go through, you're going to learn a lot of information. So the one thing that we ask is when you do come in for a wellness evaluation, we ask you to bring your loved one, your spouse. If you don't have a loved one or spouse with you, bring a friend. Bring somebody that can be an extra set of ears, because the research shows that after about 48 hours, you're going to retain about 10% of the information you hear. Okay, so it's really important for them to be there to get an idea of what's going on, and also so you bring the most information home and remember the most. Okay, all right, so this is really important. Unless you're kicking your spouse or your loved one out of the house or they're out of the country, we really encourage them to be here. So if after listening to our webinar on the thyroid and our approach to how we handle our patients, if this makes sense to you and you're motivated to take care of your health issues, then I encourage you to give us a call and schedule a consult with us, because we're excited to get working with those that are wanting to turn their health around. So again, if you have any questions or if you'd like to schedule a consult, please give us a call at the number provided on the last slide, which is 972-996-2420. It's been a great pleasure to be able to take the time out of the day and educate you on the thyroid health and about the better options and solutions out there for getting things turned around. This is Dr. Rayner. I just want to thank you very much. Have a great day.